You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies.
Hello, everybody. Welcome here to another edition of Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast here with Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Skyler Timmons, joined here once again by gruff-voiced Evan Lang.
I've been eating a lot of lozenges today.
You're supposed to suck on the lozenges, Evan. You're doing it wrong.
Oh, I thought you just threw them in your mouth and chewed them up, crunched them. I was wondering why my teeth hurt so much. Surely I must be doing something wrong.
But, yeah, it's a new week, a new episode. Not a whole lot has happened this past week with the Rockies. Or has there, Evan?
Yeah, I can think of one or two pretty big things.
Tyler Freeman got ejected today, and Warren Schaefer got ejected for the first time. So that's big news.
Clint Hurdle managed his first game since 2019 and his first Rockies game since May 27th, 2009.
There you go. Fun stuff. Surely that's the most significant thing that happened this week. But we'll get into some stuff. We'll also talk a little bit, maybe some trade talk, maybe some draft talk, because the draft's right around the corner, Evan. And we'll also touch on some all-star updates. Currently with the voting, where our good friend Hunter Goodman ended up. But first, Evan, the big news, the talk of the week. There has been a change in the Rockies front office. No, Bill Schmidt is still the general manager. Dick Monfort still owns the team. So it has nothing to do with that. But if you've been living under a rock this past week and weren't aware, Walker Monfort, the oldest son of Dick Monfort, was promoted to executive vice president, Evan, and will be replacing Greg Fiesel, who will stay in the role through the end of the year, and then Walker will take it fully on January 2026. But surprising move, Evan, or what your reactions to this? What do you make of this move?
The way I've put it is that the move itself is not surprising. The timing is. Mm-hmm. Where I think we've all known for quite some time, and we've talked about it before, that, Dick Monfort's very clearly been grooming his sons to take over running the team at some point, not exactly a spring chicken at 71 years old. And Walker Monfort on the business side has been kind of the heir apparent for a while, where he has worked his way up on the business side of baseball, and now he's being promoted to it's team president and executive vice president of business operations or something like that.
Essentially, that's what Greg Fiesel was team president and executive vice president and the business side of things, like you're saying.
Yeah, that part's not a surprise. Pretty much most of us felt like this move was coming eventually. Patrick Saunders mentioned it on the Denver Post a couple weeks ago of, the Suns are going to keep moving up in their stations with the Rockies. Like, that's basically unavoidable. And as much as everybody likes to complain, ourselves included, about it being nepotism and whatnot, that's kind of how sports teams work. It's not unheard of. It's not uncommon. It's not strange for this kind of thing to happen. And, whether it was this year or next year or years from now, at some point, this move was probably going to happen. Greg Fiesel's been with the organization since like 1994 or something like that. He's no spring chicken himself. And it was going to happen. Like, I can't think of any better way to put it other than this move has probably been in the works for some time or planned for some time. Now, what is surprising is that they're doing it in the middle of the season.
Yeah. Randomly in the middle of June, when just get the wheels rolling, and he has a full half of the year to really dig his heels in, learn the role, and kind of start implementing his vision as he's mentored by Greg Fiesel, and then Fiesel's out the door. It's kind of that weird transition where, Greg's going to stick on through the end of 2025. he's still in his job. He's quote unquote retiring. But this is something Dick and I have talked about for quite a while now. And so yeah, like I said, the timing's just weird, catches everybody off guard. And it's like, okay, I don't know how this helps the team now or what it does going forward. But I think my whole thing, and like you said, yeah, it's not uncommon for this sort of thing to happen in sports. A lot of these owners like to promote family within and whatnot. It's just, it's not uncommon, but is it always the right thing?
Oh no,
The,
absolutely, of course
the
not.
because as we've seen, the Monfort name does not inspire a lot of confidence when it comes to Rockies baseball. With
Yeah,
what the owner has done over his time, and specifically when he kind of fully took on everything running the team in around 2010 or so, when his brother and his off-field struggles were kind of kicked into the curb, and Dick took on everything. The team's kind of been in a little bit of a spiral since then. Haven't really found their footing aside from a couple of years. So the nepotism, it's going to be there. That shadow hangs over this, whether Walker has truly earned it or not. That shadow is going to hang over it. And
yeah.
that it's just the nature of the beast. This is what happens when your owner decides, well, I am an owner who is very well known that I'm going to be loyal to a fault. I'm resistant to outside people coming into this organization. Oh, who can fix my team or help fix my team? It's going to be my son, of course. He's from my loins.
I hate the way you phrase that.
He's the fruit of my loins. Fruit on the loom.
I'm going to beg you to not say loins again the rest of this episode.
Oh, we'll get it in one more time, Evan.
I hope you don't. But no, it's the optics are bad. It's not that the move itself is the worst thing in the world. It's probably not great. And
Yeah.
the Rockies, who we've repeatedly said need more outside influence coming in and more fresh ideas. Having in the midst of a historically bad season, coming out and publicly going, I'm promoting my son. We had the same thing a couple of years ago when Sterling Monfort was promoted to director of scouting, director of pro scouting, which was 2021 or 2022. And that went over like a lead balloon back then. And I would argue that this is going over a lot worse because the Rockies have gotten worse since then. And it's, it doesn't exactly bring in fresh ideas, but at the same time, I'm trying to be open to it because there are a couple things where Walker and also Sterling are a little bit more qualified for their positions than dear old dad is, where they've both spent much more time in and around the game since they were young. Walker started on the grounds crew with the Rockies. He's been a clubhouse manager. He's been around the players. He's been in various operations, ticket sales, promotional team stuff. He's pretty well groomed, I would say, for the business side of things, which is hopefully most of what he is going to be doing. But I would also argue he's got more an understanding of what the Rockies need to do than his dad does.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when in the interview clips he's saying, he's like, I see eye to eye with my dad. I want to work really closely with my dad.
We have the same vision.
Those are both the right and the wrong things to say at the same time.
Yeah, and it's like you speak, he has all that experience, but where is he getting that experience? Oh, it was with the Rockies. So he's growing up in the environment of all the stuff that has happened with this organization, all the bad and the good, whatever is in there. But no, he's been around that. When all you know is Rockies baseball, how do you fix that? When all the experience you have is what you've learned being as part of the Rockies organization. And so, yeah, you can give them the benefit of the doubt where on the corporate side of things, business side of, okay, trying to, generate revenue and bring in partnerships. He's overseen the MLB TV deal over the last couple seasons. Big part of that and other sponsorships, the corporate side of things. How is he going to take whatever he's learned and apply it now to this bigger position of Greg Fiesel, because that's what Greg Fiesel was kind of over. Is he'd come on the broadcast and say, "Oh, we've got this nice food coming into this season that you got to try," and no, these are the promotions that we're hoping to do. And like Evan, I got to say, looking at his body of work with promotions and other stuff and in-game entertainment, that doesn't fill me with confidence because honestly, personally speaking, I find it incredibly boring and lackluster at a Rockies game. The in-game
Yeah,
entertainment, promotions, like it leaves a lot to be desired.
there's a lot of stuff that I have seen other teams do just so much better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Talk about the Milwaukee Brewers. They've got their, the sausage race.
Yeah.
Even the Texas Rangers have something they call the dot race, which is still like a corporate thing, but it's got so much more personality
Yeah.
of like you're watching these people in costumes lie, cheat, fight, and steal for that first place victory versus the Rockies still just have the pretty generic car race that's on the Jumbotron.
Yeah.
And
Whose idea was it to have the tooth trot way back in the day?
I'd rather have the tooth trot.
Something, but like even that, when they did have, you're like, really, this is the best we could do? Is a tooth trot?
Yeah. You could do like the burrito race where a bunch of Chipotle burritos
Yeah.
race around, or the Diamondbacks do
The
the
legends.
Rangers Legends race where you've got like Randy Johnson and Luis Gonzalez and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the Rockies, and I wonder how much of this is because it's been Dick Monfort and Greg Fiesel in charge of how dated everything feels.
Mm-hmm.
And how little change there's been in terms of in-game promotions and entertainment over the last decade or so.
Yeah. It's like, no, with in-gamer team stuff, could we not have updated? Why do we still have "Hey Baby" as the only staple thing? Again, like nothing against it, but they've been doing that for for who knows how long now. So like the in-game stuff's kind of it's been lackluster. And like, has Walker been in charge of that? Okay, well, do you have any better ideas? Type of stuff. And you wonder too, like you're just mentioned, of how much of his no baby being held back by the guys that are above him, or maybe he wanted to do something else, but then his dad and Greg feels like, no, we don't have the money for that.
No, the kids love Hey Baby.
Yeah. Hey, you want to see where the hat is hidden, or see the ball hidden under a hat? Oh, hey, well, let's watch these animated trucks race through downtown Denver. Whatever.
It's not even really downtown Denver.
Yeah.
And that's the thing for me. It's like there is so much you could do in terms of in-game entertainment with Colorado stuff. And something that they had a couple of years ago that was at least kind of funny was Bear or Beard,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, here's a zoomed in picture. Is this a Rockies player's facial hair, or is this an honest to God bear?
Yeah.
And that was at least like kind of fun, and it's gone already.
Yeah. Well, and to that, nobody on this team really has much facial hair at all. Aside from, would it be Jake Bird every time?
Kinley had a pretty big bushy beard at the beginning of the season, but he shaved it off.
But yeah, so you can't put too much on that. But you look around of, okay, what is Walker Monfort's body of work? Like it kind of makes you wonder. And a part of it too, probably, Evan, of it's probably hard to find sponsorships with the Rockies because they're bad and nobody wants to pay attention to them. And so how hard is it to sell the team to a sponsor? Like, hey, sponsor this thing in our game. Oh yeah, well, okay, yeah, we do suck. You wonder that part of it too, of how hard is it to sell this team to people to invest in it with advertising money and corporate sponsorships and stuff.
Yeah. Now I will say, and I've said this before, whoever's in charge of like the rooftop stuff, and in general, the food and drink at Coors is pretty solid. Like I've never really had an issue with any of that, but I'll once again sing the praises of all the stuff on the rooftop, especially the Silver Bullet Bar, the amazing bartenders and crew up there, especially the one guy who I know has listened to this segment before. But there are parts of the stadium experience, the game day experience, that are excellent. And there are parts, and it's mostly the in-game entertainment side of things that I think are way more lackluster. because the stadium itself is still gorgeous. The food and drink experience is great. For the most part, and even the parts that aren't great, like your very basic concessions, like this is the regular hot dogs and burgers stand or whatever, are still totally fine. Lots of interesting food items. They usually do at least something nice that I like every year in terms of new concessions and things like that. But it's the in-game presentation that I think leaves a lot to be desired. And I also wonder is why the Rockies, whose decision it is that the Rockies don't use all of their jersey slots. Because they've still got one open. Ever since they got rid of the vests, they have an open jersey slot. And they don't use it.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing to remember with this is that Walker Monfort, in his title, this is not a president of baseball operations that a lot of other teams do. This is not him being the GM. It's the assumption is that he's going to keep doing what he's been doing, is working on the business side of things, figuring out how to generate revenue, bring in people to the ballpark, the business operations, make sure everything's running smoothly, like day-to-day business operations. That's what it sounds like. But then we look at Evan, how much of this role is going to evolve maybe into a little bit more of the baseball operations, team construction, and just how the team. That's something he was talking about in his interviews, when he was about his new role, was maximizing resources and taking a deep dive into other teams of similar market size, like the Brewers, the Twins. What are these teams doing that maybe we're not doing that's different? And it sounds like he's going to maybe try to be a little bit more active in the operations of the team that would help the baseball side of things.
Yeah.
Which is encouraging to hear, but you wonder like how much of his role is going to evolve into that.
And I do think he's going to have some say over baseball operations. I think that this move is coming too close to the draft and too close to the trade deadline for that to be a coincidence.
Yeah.
I think he's going to have some things to say on that matter.
Yeah.
But it's also not a full, like you said, it's not a full president of baseball operations role. And I think a lot of what he's going to looking at is looking at more of the business side of baseball operations, which is something that the Rockies have been really lacking in for a long time now. Talking about the allocation of resources and getting up to speed with what other organizations are doing is saying all of the right things because they're things that we've been saying this team needs to do. You need to spend more on minor league and player development. You need to spend more on analytics and coaching and all of that stuff like that. So if that comes with Walker Monfort, then that's excellent.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think you want him to have the same all-encompassing power over baseball operations that Dick Monfort has.
Yeah. And that's what you worry about when it's the family business, because it feels like, well, guess who's probably would become the GM or president of baseball ops? Well, he's currently the director of scouting, and his name is Sterling Monfort. Like that's what he's being groomed for on the baseball side of things, because that's what Dad has picked out for him, type of thing. So that's just the unfortunate nature of all of this. Is like you'd want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but there's gonna be the hanging shadow of Dick Monfort. That Monfort name is on them. Their dad's sons. Oh, of course they're going to get the top spots in the front office organization. Of course they get to be the bosses because Dad owns the team. And no, it's not necessarily. It's not fair to them to have that hang over them, but that's the nature of the beast. And you hope that they've learned from the sins of the father, that they've watched what has happened with the team where they're like, yeah, no, we don't agree with what Dad's been doing. We want to do something different with hopefully we can convince him to let us do something different. But if you have owner, team president, executive vice president, and then president of baseball ops, if all three are Monfort, Dick and his two sons, it doesn't inspire much confidence.
Yeah.
On paper, like when you look at it.
At the very least, what I will say is that, at least to my knowledge, Sterling and Walker are much more respected in baseball circles than Dick is, in terms of kind of, knowing what they are doing, being much more knowledgeable about baseball, and having spent, and even if it was with the Rockies organization, still having spent time down in the nitty gritty of it, where it's like, Sterling has worked with the minor league organizations in addition to some of the other stuff that he's doing and working as an active scout. And Walker has all the different experience that he's had in various parts of the Rockies clubhouse and field and everything like that throughout his time. It's that they have at least spent some time in the trenches since they were quite young.
Yeah.
I mean, Walker was doing some of this stuff before the basic stuff, like the grounds crew and clubhouse stuff, before he graduated college. And you can say the same for Sterling as well, versus, Dick Monfort, when he took control of the team, he didn't know that much about baseball. I would argue still doesn't know that much about baseball, but he's never really spent the time in the trenches because he immediately went to, I am in charge and you are going to listen to what I say.
Yeah. Yeah. So like always, we're going to wish him the best of luck. Hopefully he can make a positive influence, but the margin for error is going to be razor thin because of the name that he has. And again, he's another internal promote from within. And it gets even worse because his dad owns the team. And best of luck to him. Let's hope he can maximize resources and help get some things rolling where the team could have some extra money to do some other stuff, improve the analytics side of things. But it's going to be a razor thin margin for error with Walker Monfort as the new executive vice president for the Colorado Rockies. I wish my dad owned a baseball team. That would have been fun.
But knowing your luck, it would have been like, I don't know, was a goofy team. Insert joke here. the Grand Junction Humpback Chubs.
Yeah. Hey, better than nothing.
Which Dick Monfort did used to own.
There you go. But yeah. Anyways, best of luck to Walker Monfort and the rest of the Rockies
for that segment.
But we'll take our first break here. When we come back, plenty left to talk about. Let's do some All-Star talk when we come back here on Affected by Altitude. Welcome back here, Affected by Altitude. Skyler and Evan here with you. And let's start off with some All-Star talk here. Evan, the first phase of voting recently, it ended this week, and then the finalist for the starting spots, that voting will begin on Monday. And unfortunately, our prime candidate, Hunter Goodman, did not make it into the final two for the finalists. He did finish fourth behind JT Realmuto. He had like a little over 650, like 655,000, somewhere around there, I think is what Hunter Goodman ended with. But finishes fourth behind the finalists, Will Smith for the Dodgers. That one was expected. Carson Kelly of the Cubs, who just had a really good first month of the season, but he plays for the Cubs, and they come out in droves, I guess. And then JT Realmuto, because Phillies, name recognition. But Hunter Goodman, still very admirable finish there in fourth place in the fan voting, Evan. Everybody was a long shot behind Will Smith, but still good numbers for Hunter Goodman on this Rockies team that people took notice and voted for him. And he got the votes, which is cool to see.
And for so many of these positions, it's always going to be name brand recognition. Yes, Will Smith is one of the best catchers in the league, but he's also a Dodger. And there is at least one Dodger for every single position in the All-Star voting this year. There is a non-zero chance that we come away with a starting roster for the National League All-Star team that is just the Los Angeles Dodgers starting roster.
Yeah.
But for Hunter Goodman to take a pretty close fourth in terms of fan voting on a small to mid-market team that is actively a bad team. Like, when you ask most people what they know about the Rockies, it's that they're bad. So for him to get that decent chunk of the fan vote is really, really encouraging. And it's very similar to, I think, the year Elias Diaz went to the All-Star game. He finished in like fourth or fifth.
Mm-hmm.
in terms of voting for the first phase. And I do think that we're probably going to see Hunter Goodman as our candidate, and it's going to be very, very well deserved. Unfortunately, he probably won't be a starter unless somebody drops out, but it's at least something to hang your hat on. Is going, he could have been an all-star.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's a I keep saying is no, he deserved more than just like the token nod. Like he deserved to be a finalist. He deserved the all-star nod from the fan vote. Like he was deserving of that. But instead, no, because that one I think would have held more water, in the bucket, been more meaningful to be selected by the fans. I know, he'll probably be selected like on a player ballot and whatnot, which that takes in a great honor of in itself. Be recognized by your colleagues and by the league. But just unfortunate. But the finalists in general, good on Hunter Goodman, deserve more. But let's run through some of these finalists around the league real quick, Evan. Of course, your top overall vote getters who have an automatic bid for the start: Aaron Judge for the Yankees, and then Shohei Ohtani will be the starting DH for the National League. Judge in the American League in the outfield. Both just
Shocker.
ton of votes. Yeah, who nobody's shocked by that. Top vote getter was Aaron Judge, over 4 million. But then in the American League, catchers, Cal Raleigh, the big dumper, and Alejandro Kirk, both very deserving there. Kirk's had a really good season, but Raleigh's just a historical MVP caliber season for Cal Raleigh.
Yeah, 32 home runs before the All-Star break is pretty darn good.
First base, you got Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Paul Goldschmidt. Goldie's been having a good year, just with his average and everything, but with the Yankees, name brand, good solid year for both of them. Second base, there's a lot more Tigers on this list than maybe you'd expect. Second base, you've got Gleyber Torres for the Tigers, and then Jackson Holiday. Holiday, I don't know why, but okay. Matt Holiday and Ethan doing a lot of voting there.
It's the name brand of,
yeah.
Even though he's not having a terrible season, but I wouldn't say it's an all-star worthy campaign where he's hitting like 259 with 10 homers. Yeah, it's fine, but I wouldn't call it an all-star thing.
Yeah. There's always options. Like Brandon Lowe for the Tampa Bay Rays. Like, why isn't he there? He's having a really good season for the Tampa Bay Rays. Third base, Jose Ramirez and Alex Bregman, both perfectly good choices. Shortstop, Jacob Wilson for the Athletics and Bobby Witt Jr. Jacob Wilson probably deserves it. Bobby Witt just hasn't had as much of an impact this year, but that whole Royals lineup is not having a good year. Then in the outfield, you've got Riley Green for the Tigers, Javi Baez as well, Mike Trout for the Angels, and Stephen Kwan for the Guardians. I can think of at least two of those who probably don't need to be finalists.
Yeah. And then for the DH, you've got Ben Rice of the Yankees and Ryan O'Hearn with the Orioles for the American League side of things. But something that's really worth pointing out, and I feel like this has always been the case for the American Leagues, is that it's always a lot more spread out. Like, yes, you've got your quote unquote name brand players, but you've got lots of representatives from lots of different teams of varying market sizes. You've got some of the guys who are legitimately the best at their position or one of the best. So yes, you've got the Yankees, you've got the Red Sox, but you've also got the Angels, the Tigers, the Guardians, the A's, there's a bunch of different teams on here that are represented.
The guys that deserve to be recognized, like they usually rise to the top. The cream rises to the top. That's typically what happens with the American League. National League, on the other hand, this is where you get into that name brand way more. Like we already mentioned, catcher Will Smith, Carson Kelly, who had a really good month of April, pretty pedestrian following 2 months, even though a certain Rocky has pretty much been better offensively across the board than Carson Kelly has over the season. Over at first base, Freddie Freeman, of course, Pete Alonso, who's had a very good year, so you expect him to be there. Second base, Ketel Marte, Tommy Edman, one of those much more deserving than the other. Let's see. Third base, Manny Machado, Max Muncy. That one's a lot of brand recognition. Muncy has been playing well, but is he the top one? I don't know.
Yeah. Is he one of the best third basemen in the league? I don't think
Yeah,
so.
where's Eugenio Suarez? Why isn't he on this list?
Heck, even Nolan Arenado, who turned in a very good month of June.
Yeah. So you got them, and then shortstop Francisco Lindor, Mookie Betts. Where's Ellie De La Cruz? Why isn't he getting any recognition? Then that aspect as a finalist. Outfield, Pete Crow Armstrong, of course, Teoscar Hernandez, Ronald Acuna Jr., Kyle Tucker, Andy Pajes, and Juan Soto. Again, you see 2 Dodgers on there. They're like not bad seasons.
Yeah.
But
what is very telling about the National League finalists is that there are only 3 players that are not from the Mets, the Dodgers, or the Cubs.
Yeah.
The entire starting lineup or finalist ballots for the National League All-Star Game is completely dominated by 3 teams. Really, by 2 teams. Because, yeah, there's a couple Cubs in there, but it's the Mets and the Dodgers, and it's mostly the Dodgers.
Yeah. Anyway, the main moral of the story is that fan voting is broken and it never works. I've said it before, democracy just doesn't work.
Except I agree, because fan voting is always going to run this way, and arguably it is worse than in the National League than it is in the American League. But I remember the 2016 All-Star Game where it was almost entirely the Kansas City Royals because they had just won the World Series the season prior.
Yeah. Ugh. It's almost like, hey, every region should just vote for their own all-stars on their team. Like, okay, only Dodgers. No, the city of Los Angeles, you get to vote for your Dodgers all-star representatives. I don't know. I mean, just the whole process, because there's guys that get on the ballot that do not need to be there at all because they've played 3 games, they've been injured, they have no stats, yet they're on the ballot.
Yeah, like Mike Trout as a finalist is ridiculous.
Yeah, so there needs to be more stipulations. I think just qualifiers.
Yeah, especially when the All-Star Game doesn't actually mean anything in terms of the regular season or playoffs, which it used to, and I still think it's ridiculous that it used to. But is like, why couldn't you do similar to like what the NHL does, where you break it into regions or divisions?
Yeah.
Like, here is your Western All-Stars and your Central All-Stars and your Eastern All-Stars. And then you could do like a round robin little tournament or something like that.
Like short little, like 5, do it like in MLB The Show, just little 3-inning games, a little battle royale in your regions. And like who has, okay, the National League West is going to be dominated. Yeah, there's going to be Dodgers are carrying that load, but I don't know but then that requires just have way more players, and I'm not sure teams are going to want that.
Yeah.
Anyways, there's a way you could fix it, but who knows? Anyways, that's some all-star talk. Congrats to Hunter Goodman. Gave it a good try. Probably will still get that rep. Maybe Jake Bird will sneak his way in. Who knows? How wild would that be? The year the Rockies are going to be historically bad, more than ever before, and they'd get 2 all-stars. That'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, their first season with multiple all-stars since 2019?
Yeah.
The season of David Dahl.
Mm-hmm. But fun stuff. All-Star game coming up here in a couple weeks. And you know what? Let's transition into some draft talk with the All-Star game coming around, All-Star break. The draft is coming up, Evan. Rockies will pick 4th. There's been a lot of mock drafts popping up over at MLB.com. Been shuffling around, but one name that keeps popping up, potentially, and he could follow the Rockies if he's not taken first or earlier in those first 3 picks, is one Ethan Holiday. Could potentially end up with the Rockies. MLB Pipeline, he's shown up there in a couple of their mock drafts. What do you think, Evan? What do you think the Rockies do with the number 4 pick of this year's draft?
I mean, honestly, I think it's a no-brainer for the Rockies, where if Ethan Holiday is not drafted first overall by the Washington Nationals, He is expected to still be available in the Rockies select fourth. And Ethan Holiday is not only one of, if not the best left-handed bats in the draft, he's also one of, if not the best high school player in the draft. He's listed as a third baseman or a shortstop. You could probably develop him as either. I see him more ending up being third base or even outfield like his dad. You've got the name recognition connection of a Holiday returning to Colorado. It's kind of a no-brainer choice, honestly, where if he's available, you take him. But at the same time, they'd also be taking him because he would potentially be the best player available, which sometimes you need to do. Is just when you're in the midst of a full-scale rebuild, which is what needs to happen with the Rockies, you just take the best player that is available. And that might be Ethan Holiday. But there's a lot of other really interesting guys in this draft that if Holiday is not there at number 4, you could still be satisfied with the Rockies taking.
Yeah, and then part of me too, that's the hard part, is knowing the Rockies' track record. Okay, say they do get Ethan Holiday. Can they draft him properly? Can he develop properly enough with this organization to reach his potential? No, that's what you worry about, especially with the Rockies, because as we've talked about, you've documented pretty well. They haven't done too well in their history with a lot of those first round picks. And, considering they've struggled with high school picks, and, look at Zach Veen, look at Benny Montgomery. We're still waiting on them. And they were drafted in 2020, 2021, like that kind of stuff. We're still waiting on those guys. And you worry about high school players. I think a lot of teams in baseball are kind of trending more towards, okay, we want to take these more established, developed college players because it's less development on our part and we can get them up quicker. You wonder if maybe the Rockies are scared of that. How much confidence do they have? And like you're saying, if he's available, I'm sure they would take him for all those reasons you mentioned. But no, as a fan, somebody that covers the team, it puts concern is, it might be a good fit for the Rockies, might not be a good fit for Ethan Holiday.
Yeah, it's a problem because, well, for a couple of reasons. Ethan Holiday is probably going to size out of shortstop, like a lot of players do, where he's just not going to have the range to cover short, but could be a really good third baseman. But the Rockies have kind of a weird situation at third base right now, where if they get rid of Ryan McMahon, you've got Kyle Karros and Charlie Condon maybe, but Charlie Condon you view as sort of more of a first baseman at this point, in my opinion, or an outfielder versus third base. And so then if you draft Holiday, what happens to Karros? And you've also got to look at the development aspect of Ethan Holiday actually has some really good habits already. He's pretty good at drawing walks. He's got a good eye. He can hit well. He's got thump. And you kind of worry about the Rockies developing all of the good that is in this pretty well-rounded high school player out of him.
Yeah. Yeah. And then part of it too, I don't know, like I can just understand like the nature of having an MLB dad as well that had a really good career. Know how much of it will be there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and he's hearing something from dad, but then the Rockies are messing with something else. And I'm sure Matt Holliday's not like that, but it's something you always worry about. But yeah, it'd be an interesting one. I have no doubt that he'd be a good player and could develop into a player. It's more so, do we trust the Rockies to make good on his potential?
Yeah,
type of thing.
I think that's more of the problem is that no matter who the Rockies draft in a couple of weeks, the question is going to be, can the Rockies develop them properly? Because there's a lot of really interesting talent in this draft, and there's a lot of interesting talent in the draft every year. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I don't think the Rockies draft poorly. I think they develop poorly, and that makes it look like they draft poorly.
Yeah. They're good at identifying talent. They just don't know what to do to promote that talent. Yeah, like a lot of other mock drafts has like Cade Anderson, that left-hander from LSU hopping up. He showed off really well in the College World Series and whatnot. So there's that potential. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And I've got a couple guys that I'm really high on where if I don't think Cade Anderson is going to be available um, at fourth overall, regardless of who gets picked, but who could be available is Florida State lefty Jamie Arnold or Tennessee lefty Liam Doyle. I'm very high on Liam Doyle, and the Rockies have had some pretty good luck drafting young pitchers out of the University of Tennessee. So that's another well that I'd be happy to go down where, yes, they're still kind of raw, but Chase Dollander and Seth Halverson have developed into big league contributors in a very short amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's if Holiday's not available, you probably go with one of those lefty arms because that's kind of what the Rockies are lacking in a sense of, maybe if you can find a little bit more of a power lefty, a legit arm that could be an ace because the lefties they do have are not, they fit into the mold of a Kyle Freeland, a little bit more of a soft tosser, crafty lefty. There's nobody that's, on a the higher degree of this is the left-handed version of Chase Dollander, hard throwing lefty.
Yeah, that would be Liam Doyle, in my opinion. He's got an explosive fastball with a high release point that is at its best when you're putting it at the very top of the strike zone, which is something that Rockies pitchers, since Bud Black left, have been allowed to do and could pay dividends. Like Chase Dollander's fastball, when he gets that at the top of the zone with how explosive it is, has that same kind of thing. And I would say Liam Doyle is very similar in that regard. He's also got a pretty well-rounded arsenal of secondary pitches that I think can play really well. He's got a cutter, he's got a slider, he's got a splitter. And the only downsides really are that he hangs that cutter and he hangs that slider a little more than he should, and he gets punished for it. And that's something a big league coaching staff should be able to help develop out of him.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the fact of the matter though is they have to hit on whoever they do get, whether it's Holiday or it's one of these other pitchers, they have to hit on this guy and he has to be a contributor for the big league team in the near future because you've shot yourself in the foot. You don't get the number one pick for this season because of the draft lottery. You're ineligible for the top pick next year because of you being bad over these last couple of years. And so you have to hit on this year to make so you can swallow the pill a little bit better next year when you can't pick higher than 10th.
Yeah.
There's options that they could to make it a little easier, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But we're breezing right along here, Evan. How about we take another break here, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit some trade talk. Sound good?
Oh, I suppose so.
Alrighty then. We'll be right back here on Affected by Altitude. Welcome back here. Affected by Altitude. Entering our final segment here. And real quick before we get into some trade talk, Evan, I don't know if did you ever see that Athletic article? It was like a little player poll about managers they want to play for and ones they don't want to play for.
Yes. I wrote about it over on Purple Row a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. I was busy that week. I had a lot going on and everything, but I was just found it humorous looking at what somebody had said about Bud Black. Even though people were saying like I was going to vote for the Rockies no matter who the manager was because they stink, but I liked what somebody said. A pitcher said because on Bud Black because he doesn't stop talking when he's in the dugout, and as a player, it gets kind of annoying. Plus, it means I'd be pitching in Colorado. I just found that so funny.
He's the only respondent who actually had a reason for picking Bud Black other than I'd be having to play for the Rockies, and he still couched it in I'd have to play for the Rockies.
Yeah.
But just the fact that he's like, well, he talks a lot, and that's annoying.
Because Bud Black won't shut up in the dugout.
And that's something that we've noticed over the last couple of weeks with Warren Schaefer. On Friday games, they'll interview the skipper for a brief moment in time. And with Warren Schaefer, brief is the operative word right there, like maybe 30 seconds. Versus for Bud, he'd keep going.
Yeah, but
And it's one of the reasons why he was very good at talking to the media, is because
yeah,
he could keep finding things to talk about. Not
yeah, but,
necessarily a bad thing, just funny to recognize.
yeah. As a player, it's annoying. He won't shut up in the dugout. I can understand that. Like if he's just constantly talking, like, yeah, I get that. But I just barely saw that the other day, and I wanted to bring it up
It's
a
very
couple
funny.
times. But
Yeah,
anyways,
that player's poll was rough.
yeah, not many responded on the who I don't want to play for, but Black did get 5 votes, tied for most of players. And like I said, a lot of it probably was players not wanting to play for the Rockies, and they were just going to pick the manager, whoever it was.
Yeah, a lot of the respondents basically said, well, I don't really know that much about managers that I haven't played for.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it would be like based on. I'm sure a lot of it would have to be based on players that no longer play for those managers. Like, yeah, I don't want to play for them anymore.
yeah. Unsurprisingly, the team with the best reputation among all respondents is the Dodgers. The team with the worst reputation among all respondents is the Athletics, which just their whole season so far, in addition to everything else, has just been an absolute mess in
Yeah,
terms of where they're playing, in terms of their players speaking out against where they're playing. It's not great, but the Rockies also ranking very lowly in that regard, where they're tied for the third worst reputational league with the Miami Marlins, and ahead of them are the White Sox and the Athletics. And I think that's one thing to think about. Of the Rockies are really bad this year, and we're probably going to beat the White Sox record for most losses in a season that they set last season. But the White Sox aren't getting talked about as much only because the Rockies are so bad. When the White
mm-hmm.
Sox are just as bad as they were last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like they are on the same pace. They are the same team. They are just as terrible. But because the Rockies are worse, it's having that attention taken away from them.
Dang straight. And because they're one of the worst, that perfect segue to what we want to talk about here. A little bit of will the Rockies be sellers at the deadline? Will they be more active than they have in the past, or are they just gonna? Is it kind of going to be more of the same, where they'll make a trade or two, but nothing really significant that makes any sort of waves for the organization, Evan? But let's start off there real quick. Just what is your projection? What do you think? Will the Rockies actually be more active, or is it going to be more of the same that we've experienced the last couple of years?
I think it's going to fall kind of in the middle, honestly. I think they're not going to fire sale it. They're not going to trade everything that's not bolted down like they probably should. But they're not going to be really selective like they've been in previous seasons. For starters, because a lot of the like veteran trade chip players that they brought in are gone already. Like
Yeah,
that strategy that they normally go with of, oh, we're going to sign some low risk, high reward veterans and then try and trade them for some decent prospects at the deadline. That strategy's out the window. Most of those guys are gone.
yeah.
Like all you really have left on that front is Tyro Estrada.
And even then, it's like he's been okay, but he's had a broken wrist, and he's not going to be the same hitter. But he's been doing okay.
What I really think they're going to do is I think it's going to be, we all have a list of all the players that we think needs to get traded. I think it's going to be some of them, but not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
If you want my honest opinion, I don't think the Rockies are going to trade Jake Bird. They should. They definitely should, but I don't think they're going to.
Yeah, no, with the years of control that he has, they're going to bet on him still. It's like, oh, he's figured it out this year, even though he figured it out 2 years ago, and then he stunk in the year the year in between these two seasons.
But largely because they ran him into the ground. And what have
Yeah,
they done so far this year? Well, they've run him into the ground.
yeah. Surely that'll have no adverse effects next season.
Uh, I think Kyle Freeland is completely off the table. Even if he had a more tradable contract, I think that is something that Dick Monfort especially would veto almost immediately, is the idea of trading the homegrown hometown kid. I think not in a million years.
Yeah, if like that one, it would be the players have to come out and like demand a trade. But then even how much leverage does Kyle Freeland have to demand a trade when he's not that tradable? In a sense, that would be like the only case scenario of like Dick Monfort, like, okay.
I think it's really tough to look at who's going to there because there's so many guys on this team right now. Your Sam Hilliards, your Orlando Arcias, your Kyle Farmers, where they simply just don't have trade value. They don't.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change, even though they do some really fun stuff. Like all three of those players were involved in the Rockies' victory today against Milwaukee. Orlando Arcia hit a really important home run, his second of the season. But it's just not enough, especially with how little time there is before the trade deadline and the history of in their bodies of work that's going to make a team going to want to reach out and go, I need to have that guy.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, now the Rockies could be sellers. The problem is, it's hard to be a seller when you don't really have anything of value to sell, which puts more pressure on. Well, look at Ryan McMahon. I think teams still would be interested in, considering, yeah, the offense thing, the bat still a big question mark, has not been that good. But the defense is there, and we've seen the power potential there. He could be an upgrade with a change of scenery to a lot of teams.
And there are teams I really like him going to. The Detroit Tigers are probably the team I want him to go to the most if I had to pick a team where he would be a good fit, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, him, obviously Yankees are always going to be in the market for any notable name at third base. Ryan McMahon probably be the safe. He has the benefit of being the little bit cheaper option with a little bit more control, aside from Nolan Arenado. He's younger. He's probably a better defensive, probably the best defender at third base that could potentially be on the market overall, and a little bit, easier contract to swallow, and easy for the Rockies maybe to kick in some cash with it too. Kind of like when the Toronto Blue Jays traded Grichuk to the Rockies and they kicked in $10 million on it. So, the Rockies could do something like that in a sense, but that'd be the one. Like, you can't anybody and everybody should be on the table, really, aside from maybe a couple of guys in a sense, but you can't be too stingy. Who cares at this point? You take whatever is offered.
But at the same time, you have to be realistic. Like I see there's always some proposed trade on the market, which is this team takes all of our garbage and we get all of their best prospects. Like no team is going to trade anything of value for Antonio Senzatela.
Yeah.
Or Kyle Farmer or Orlando Arcia. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Versus what we may be able to get some solid value on, and as much as it would wound me because I love him, he is my favorite pitcher on this team, there is no better time to trade German Marquez than right now, who has given up just 3 earned runs over his last 4 starts. Ever since, Warren Schaefer took over, he's looked like a completely different pitcher. He looks so much better. He looks much more like the German of old, and he is on an expiring contract. He's a free agent at the end of this season.
Yeah.
Now is the time.
Yeah, you can always take a chance and try to re-sign him in free agency, but give him a chance to go pitch for a competitor and take what you can get from another team at this point. Like you can take that gamble and we'll be okay with it.
Yeah, there are so many teams that are going to need a mid to back of rotation starter like German. The Mets could use starting pitching help, for example.
Yeah.
There are teams that will be in the market for him, and I get the sentimental value. You've had this guy since he was very young. He's still pretty young. He's only just now 30. The fans love him. He was one of the few starting pitchers in team history to be an all-star. I know all the facts. He's one of my favorite Rockies of all time. I have his jersey hanging on my wall. I love German. But at the same time, you have to recognize that the right move, the smart move, is to let him go and get anything of value in the off chance that he doesn't want to come back at the end of this season.
Yeah. We don't need another John Gray situation. We don't need our German coming out in an interview and saying, oh, well, I hope to be in purple the rest of my career. And then he just walks to free agency anyway. No, and Armand has been on the record saying, no, I want to pitch for a competitor. Like I want to win.
And he deserves that chance.
Yeah, and he's earned that, and no, that would be the way. If the Rockies truly care, if Dick Monfort cares about these players so much, why hold them back on your team? Let them go be successful somewhere else because they've earned that. You haven't
Yeah.
done. You've made your own bed and have to lie in it. You
And after
failed these players, so send them where they can go succeed.
And after today, especially where Armand had a pretty good outing today that was
Yeah.
spoiled by basically 2 pitches, one of which wasn't even that bad. Like Yelich golfed a fastball at the bottom end of the strike zone for a home run. If I'm the Rockies, I've already had this conversation with Armand or had it with him today of, look, you know where the team is at. You know where we stand. You know that we love you and would love to have you back next season. And if you decide that you want to be here next season, we will be here with open arms, ready to have you back. But right now, the best thing for both you and for the organization is to send you to a contender where you will have a chance to win and we get assets that we need to rebuild.
Yeah. And a big part of all this too with the trades and everything, why you trade McMahon too is back to what we talked about at the beginning is Walker Monfort was talking about maximizing resources. Rockies can shuffle the books here a little, get some payroll off, so then they can just kind of figure out the resources they have. Armand's making $10 million this year, or what's left of his $10 million contract. McMahon's earning $12 million this year, $32 million over the next 2 seasons, $16 million a year over the next 2 seasons.
And don't mention, so someone will help us with Chris Bryant's no.
Yeah. Nobody wants it.
Chris Bryant is never coming off of the books.
Yeah.
And so that honestly makes it even more important for the Rockies to have to shuffle some assets and figure things out and get some sort of salary relief where they can. Because yes, the Rockies could of course spend more money, but they've got so much tied up in all of these other loose ends right now. They've got all of this money tied up in Chris Bryant and Ryan McMahon, Antonio Senzatela, Kyle Freeland, and the 2 most movable contracts right now of players that have value are McMahon and Marquez.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, otherwise they're going to have to get into some good old-fashioned salary dump trades with another team where, hey, you take these guys, but we'll take your contracts of your guys that are coming off the books type of thing. That's the other scenario with like getting, if you can trade a Marquez or not a Marquez, a Senzatella or a Freeland type stuff. But
yeah, we will give you Antonio Senzatela and our number 23 organizational prospect, and in return, we don't have to pay for him anymore.
Yeah. Something like that. Or no, like we're saying too, like look at some of your prospects too. Like if you want to get some controllable major league talent, look at what prospects that you don't envision. Like is Zach Veen an option that somebody would want? No.
Which one of your 84,000 outfield prospects do you think actually is going to be a contributor for this team in the future?
Yeah, like you got to start laying out a little bit of a path, pinpointing guys. Yanquiel Fernandez, well, we like him, but we really don't have a space for him. Okay, who could we trade him away to get, a controllable starting pitcher, a controllable reliever? Maybe we get a new first baseman. Like, there's options. You can get creative with stuff. It's just willing to play ball with other teams and getting creative on the trade market.
Yeah, you got to be smart.
Yeah, smart. Do something. And wonder with Walker Monfort at the top. How much leeway will Bill Schmidt have? Is he, is he a lame duck GM right now, going through the motions?
I think he is.
How much how much leeway will he have to actually make moves and stuff? There's so many unknowns in that aspect too that just could render everything we've talked about moot and not significant in any way.
Yeah, and we could be completely wrong. Where the trade deadline comes at the end of July and the Rockies completely fire sale it and we're completely gobsmacked.
Or they could be like, hey, we're the only team who extended a guy. Enjoy your 3-year contract, Jake Bird.
That would probably be the worst case scenario, is if they come out of the trade deadline and they've extended Ehrman or something like that.
Hey, guys, we sent 3 prospects and we got Michael Givens. Wait, what? Why did we get a closer when we didn't need one?
Now we're trading Michael Givens away and getting one of those prospects back.
Kevin Pillar, come on down. That 2020 trade deadline was so whack.
I can think of a lot of trade deadlines that have been pretty whack in recent memory, dating back to 2018, where the Rockies should have been buyers at the deadline and did nothing.
Hey, we got Sung 1-0. And that was it. That was the problem.
And then
we only got one guy.
And the year before it was what? Pat Nishik and Jonathan LaCroix?
Jonathan Lucroy.
Who immediately left.
Mm-hmm.
Both of whom immediately left.
Don't worry, we got Chris Iannetta in his place. That worked out.
It's really tough because we all know that trying to guess what the Rockies are going to do is a fool's errand.
Yeah, you have better luck pulling out your tarot cards.
Yeah, we want them to zig. You betcha they're going to zag.
Yep. But hey, we'll be here to track it every step of the way as we come to the end of this episode of Affected by Altitude. How do you like them apples? As always, we appreciate you tuning in. Evan, where can the folks find you?
You can, excuse me, you can find me over on Blue Sky at evanlang27.bsky.social. I would love to hear from you. Also, catch me over on purplerow.com, writing the Monday Rock Piles and the weekly Pebble Reports on Tuesdays. Remember that you can find Rocky Mountain Rooftop as a podcast on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. That's Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You can also catch the video version of the show over on YouTube. You can find us basically on every social media platform that you'd like, over at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop. And just a fun fact for you, Clint Hurdle is undefeated as a Rockies manager since in the last decade.
Yeah, does that win go to him, or do they split it?
I believe it goes to him as the manager on record for the game.
Kind of like the pitcher.
I feel like it.
So should Warren Schaefer have managed 5 innings and then he goes on record
before he gets ejected?
Yeah. Or no, Clint Hurdle was the manager of a record, like a pitcher, I guess.
I have no idea how it works. Maybe it does get credited to Warren.
That would be my guess. That would be my guess.
I've never really had to think about it because I feel like most of the games where our manager gets ejected, we're not exactly winning. And I didn't think we were going to win this game. I had the recap over on Purple Row ready to publish when Orlando Arcia hit the 2-out home run.
And he said, take that. Backspace, backspace, backspace.
But Skyler, where can the folks find you at?
I'm over on Twitter at Skyler Timmons, or on Blue Sky at STimmons13, .psky.social. And then right in the Wednesday Rock Pile over at Purple Row. And be on the lookout. You'll probably catch us on one of those Purple Row playback streams again, watching some sort of Rockies event when they play the Chicago Cubs. Or no, the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying those streams. I think it's a lot of fun to share in the misery loves company, and having 10, 15 like-minded Rockies fans in there to shoot the breeze with during a Rockies loss is a lot more bearable.
Yeah, and luckily there's a lot of crossover with what we do here and then doing that. So be sure to follow along with that. But until next time, I'm Skyler. That's Evan. This has been Affected by Altitude on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Hit him with it.
Colonel, farewell.
Snake.
We have to find and destroy Metal Gear. I forgot to hit the end recording button.
Yes.
This has been Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast with Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. Catch new episodes every Monday on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to follow us on YouTube as well for video versions of the show.